This week, we are talking all about how to make six figures on Upwork as a freelancer. And we're talking to someone who's made over $500,000 in the last few years on Upwork. Are you ready? Let's go! What is up, self-maders? Good to see you. Good to have you again. Give us a hug, okay? Maybe you can't do that, but I'm glad that you're here on the Self-Made Web Design Podcast. You know, there's a few things that separate the folks who don't earn a lot of money on Upwork and the folks that do. And it doesn't have anything to do with magic. There's not some real big secret that anybody is keeping from anyone. No, there's some really practical and simple things that you can do right now to input into your pitches on Upwork, your profile on Upwork, that will start earning you more and more money as a freelancer on the platform. And today we're talking about it with Miss Morgan Overholt. And Morgan is a freelance graphic designer who is an expert vetted pro on Upwork. And that's like the top of the top of the top of the freelancers. And Morgan has earned over $500,000 on the platform in just a few years. And she's given away all of her secrets to us today. But before we dive in, I want to invite you to a masterclass that I am putting on, and it is happening this week. So you want to make sure that you sign up now. Like, do it now, pause the episode, go to the website and sign up, because you do not want to miss this. This is 3 simple steps to land high-paying clients on Upwork. If you're interested, if you want to learn more, go to selfmadewebdesigner.com/Upwork and sign up. There are 3 days available, and I'm going to tell you this, it is going to be worth your time. It's going to be a lot of fun. Over 500 people have already signed up to be a part of this live masterclass, and so it's going to be a lot of fun. I think it's going to be a hoot, as my Texas mother would say. It's just going to be one big hoot. Okay, enough of that. Are you ready to dive into how to be a 6-figure freelancer on Upwork with Morgan Overholt? Okay, let's do it. Well, Morgan, so good to have you on the Self-Made Web Designer Podcast again for round 2.
Thank you. I know. I'm excited to be here. I'm so honored. A repeat offender.
Yeah, no, your episode was awesome. A lot of people have listened to it and gotten just a lot of good insight. So kind of take a second and just update us on where you are, what you've been doing for the past almost a year and a half, I think. You've got a few projects that you've been working on and that you're really excited about. So I'd love to hear about those.
Well, 2020, really dull, nothing really going on that, makes you like want to make any career changes or anything. I can't think of anything. Can you?
No, not at all.
But no, seriously, 2020 actually ended up being a year of real growth for me and a little bit of a pivot, to be quite honest with you. I was definitely one of the lucky ones. I ended up with, not really missing out on a lot of client work per se. I continue to grow my client portfolio. I continue to grow my Upwork portfolio. I just reached the $500,000 mark earned on Upwork alone, which is pretty incredible. And as you know, as I talked about last time, that represents only a portion of my income. On the side, I also still have my graphic design agency. Last time we spoke, I just launched my first blog. Now I just launched my second blog. That went really, really well. So that's pretty exciting too. thesmokies.com and morganoverholt.com. Cheap plug.
That's great.
But really big things. And of course, now on the second blog, one of the things I've been able to do is kind of talk about like Upwork and offer advice and, on in a way that's sort of like passing it on to the next generation of Upworkers. And that's why I was so excited to kind of come on and talk to you today, because I know you've been wanting to pass a similar torch and say, hey, look, guys, this is what I did. Maybe this can help you as well. So I'm excited to talk to you about that today.
And I know that, one of the kind of rites of passages for freelancers is hitting those 6-figure marks and the earned income. And you've done that outside of Upwork, but also you've done that within Upwork. And so I think that's really telling of your skill and how you've kind of mastered the platform. So I'm kind of excited just to dig down into the idea of what separates a 6-figure earner on Upwork from someone who's not as high earning. And I myself am trying to get to that. We were having a conversation before we hit record where, I'm kind of getting pretty close to that mark, but you've kind of hit it. So what do you feel like is the difference between the folks who are hitting six figures on Upwork or hitting those high paying clients and those who don't necessarily get to that point?
It's honestly all about mindset, Chris. It's about mindset and hard work. And that is it. The biggest game changer that I make, and you kind of touch about on this a little bit in your course too, is treating this like a business, because that's what it is at the end of the day. And honestly, the second that you get over that mental hurdle, that gap in your mind, it's a complete game changer. And that's the truth.
So talk a little bit about that mindset. What are some things that you do to treat what you do as a freelancer like a business? And what are some common mistakes that you see some freelancers make where they're not thinking about their freelance business as an actual business?
Well, first of all, I think one of the mistakes they make is they rarely actually think about their clients or their audience personally. And they also rarely think about their ROI, right? So when I talk to you about ROI, for instance, and once again, we talked about this, I believe, in the last podcast a little bit. People are always, they're concerned about like Upwork fees, or this fee or that fee or their expenses or what have you, to the point where they actually avoid making decisions or avoid getting on platforms like Upwork or avoid investing in, software that could potentially make you money. Now, with that said, you also need to obviously research, and you need to do, teach yourself and listen to the advice of experts before getting on a platform like Upwork, or before, you're not going to be a graphic designer or a web developer just because you went to bed last night and wished on a star that it would happen. You do need to prepare, right? But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, and think about the investments that you're going to make. But at the end of the day, a lot of those times, those investments have to be made, whether it's time or financial, and to just completely write them off as saying, "Oh, I don't want to spend any money. I don't want to work hard at all." Right? That's not what business owners do. Business owners are like, "All right, here, look, these are my expenses. How do I get them down? How are they reasonable for me to afford? Does this make sense justifying it?" And they focus more on the return on those investments. Like Upwork is. Like, imagine if I didn't want to buy any Adobe software. How am I going to make any money as a graphic designer, right? If I didn't want to pursue Upwork because I was too afraid of the fees, well, I'd kiss 50% of my income goodbye. 50% of my income still as an expert graphic designer comes from Upwork, and it has for the past 4.5 years now. Imagine if I got scared away from that little 20% fee. Over the course of 4 years, I've roughly guesstimated that I've probably made Upwork and my fees about $50,000. But you know what? I've taken home $460,000.
Right.
That's an ROI.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And the second thing is, I think that people really fail to do is they fail to think about their clients like they would themselves. As someone who also occasionally hires on Upwork and elsewhere, I've been in the client's shoes, and I kind of know what they're looking for. And I feel like as freelancers, we've all had that, like, it's kind of, I think you even use the online dating reference a bit in your course. But it's so scary true, because we've all had that like one really bad date that we're like, all the dates will be like this. And the next like 10 guys that walked, sit down in that chair are going to suffer because of what the one idiot did.
Yeah.
We're kind of like that with our clients, right? We think one bad egg, then we get really protective. We put our walls up and we're afraid, and it changes the way that we interact with our clients. And it becomes more about me, and this is what I want out of the transaction. Well, your clients, guess what? They're probably feeling exactly the same way about you. They've probably been burned by freelancers before. Trust me, there are lots of very bad ones out there. I've also been burned by freelancers before who didn't meet their deadlines, didn't do what they're supposed to do, didn't deliver the kind of quality work they said they were going to deliver, or honestly just became so guarded that they almost became hateful in themselves. I mean, it's crazy. So really what I try to do is I try to think about, what is my client looking for? And they're looking for a professional that can, be friendly, but be professional, can say, hey, look, yes, your job is safe with me. Your project is safe with me. We're going to get through this together. Let's talk about what you need. I'll hold your hand as much as you want me to hold it, or I'll let you be the decision maker as much as you want me to let you do that. And we're going to get through this together, and to treat them in a way that they feel like you've got their back. like a good friend, like a good business partner, like a good business owner will do, instead of just being like, well, I don't know, I might be able to get it done. I don't know, I'm really stressed out this weekend. Like I cavity pulled at 4:00 on Friday, so can we push it deadline until Monday? I mean, like your business owner just doesn't do that stuff. Just
Right.
be a
Yeah.
professional, and
Yeah.
communicate ahead of time.
And I love the idea of the investment that you're putting into something and the return that you're getting back for it. And I think it's something that a lot of freelancers in particular don't understand, that it, let's say you put $10 into advertisement. Well, if you get $100 back from that $10 you put in, you just made a really good return. And so a lot of freelancers, when it comes to Upwork, they see that and they're like, I don't want to do the $10. I'm like, but you could have 90, right? And I was looking up some different stats in the Upwork investors things that they put out. And last year they put $26 million into advertisement. $26 million. So I'm giving away 20 to 5% of whatever I'm getting from the work that I do on Upwork. And, like you said, that was $50,000 for the lifespan of what you've done on Upwork. But, for instance, in a given year, for me, if I made $30,000, that could be anywhere from $2,000, $3,000, $4,000. But with that, I get $26 million of marketing where they're just constantly pushing folks to look at me and consider me for a job that I would not have gotten had they not put that money in there.
We also don't talk enough about the other, and I hate to sound like this because people are I always get accused of sounding like an Upwork commercial, so I don't mean to sound that way, but genuinely, like there are other tools they offer as well, like just the time tracker alone. Like a lot of people, and I tell people this, especially if they have the same trust issues that I know I had in the beginning and sometimes still have with a brand new client before we really get to know each other, because you always worry, are they going to stiff me on the payment, right? Like the time tracker though, when you actually use the one that takes pictures of your screen, and I actually have gotten to where I demand this with all new clients until I trust them to know they're good for it. The payments are completely automated. I don't have to log anything. Your proposal works like it's your contract. You don't have to create a separate contract. It's basically irrefutable. As long as your time tracker shows you doing the work, the client cannot complain about it or ask for their money back. I mean, there's a lot of protections that goes into it. The automatic invoicing, their card is automatically charged. You don't have to worry about them like logging back in, unless you're doing milestone thing, then they gotta, log back in and do it. But on the time tracker, all completely automatic. And it's funny because I even have several clients now on Upwork who I've been with now for more than 2 years, which by the law, I could take off the Upwork platform. And I've only done that like a couple of times ever after the 2-year mark, because most of the time I argue with the client to get them to stay on Upwork. Because almost without fail, and I've got a couple of good ones, a lot of times when I've taken my Upwork clients off platform after the 2-year mark, I'm going to say that again because anybody's like trying to call me on, after 2 years, it's fine. After the 2-year mark, they're not as quick to pay. I have to use my own invoicing software. I have to use my own time logging software. I have to write a separate contract. All these services I pay for, Rocket Lawyer, I pay for Ann.co by Fiverr to do contracts and invoicing. These things take up time. And like I said before, half the clients where I end up having to chase down the invoices. I'm like, oh yeah, sorry, I forgot. They're not trying to stiff you, but they're just so used to that, automatic, just come out of your bank account that Upwork offered, spoiled us both. So yeah. I really, we don't even talk about the other services that you're getting for that ROI. And for me as a business owner, when I compare, my Upwork contracts and expenses, and I call the fees just an expense compared to my offsite expenses, they're about the same, to be honest with you. So just don't get too hung up on that stuff, guys. As long as your ROI is healthy, you're good to go.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's great insight. I want to talk a little bit about what you mentioned about treating your clients as you would want to be treated yourself, kind of the golden rule of freelancing. Because when I look at your profile feed, there's so much feedback of clients who are like, Morgan always gets everything done on time. She was communicative through the entire process. Like she anticipated my needs in the midst of it, and I wonder if that is something that kind of sets the lower earning freelancers on Upwork apart from the higher earning freelancers like yourself. And so talk a little bit about that. Like what is your system like with working with clients? Do you have the same thing that you do every single time with project management, or is it something you're just kind of figuring it out as you go?
I treat my clients, just like I said earlier, like I want myself to be treated. I meet them where they are. Some of my clients, in fact, one of the very first things that I do is I ask them, is this your first time on Upwork? Because that will actually tell me a lot right there, right? Especially somebody is pretty seasoned now on Upwork, because a newbie might not know what to expect. They might not know what questions to ask. They might not know semantically exactly how the platform works. And then I also ask if they use freelancers, frequently, because that's also a really important question. A lot of people, some people have project management experience, but some people have no project management experience. And you don't really need, necessarily to be professionally trained in project management, but it certainly helps if you're used to working with outsourced work and other people, or even on teams. And those little things make a really big difference too. Like I might even change the way that I act or the questions that I ask if I know I'm working with an experienced project manager, because typically speaking, those project managers will have some sort of project management software in place that they'll want me to hop on and use, or they already have the tools. They already know how they want to communicate, like Slack or email or what have you. They'll be more descriptive. They'll provide the files without me asking for it. But see, if I kind of determine a client to be a bit more green, then I automatically know, like my whole mind from the start of the contract is like an org chart, right? It's like, okay, has been on Upwork before? Yes, no. And then I make decisions, and my follow-up questions are kind of based on those questions as I go. So I really cater it to them, versus like a non-Upwork or non-freelance experienced client. I might spend more time asking questions like, all right, so this is typically what an engagement like this is going to look like. Do you already have branding files? Do you know what a vector is? Can you have your logo in a vector form? Do you have colors that you normally use? Do you have anything in mind? What is your deadline? Is that the real deadline? Because another thing that inexperienced people will often do is they'll give you the final deadline. Well, the final deadline ain't the graphic design deadline, because the final deadline usually involves proofers. It involves a print shop, etc. A newbie might not think to ask any of those questions. They might wait to the final day the thing is due, and then, oh, wait, now I have to send it to the printer, and the printer needs 2 weeks. See, and that's the difference between, I think the highest earners and the people who are just on there to make a few bucks. I'm on there to build a business and engage in a client relationship that they're going to call on me for years to come. I don't sit there and worry about, are they going to get $100, $50 here, whatever, and trying to make the quick buck. I'm focused on that relationship and those long-term payouts. That's the kind of stuff that separates you, to be honest.
I think that's great insight. And I think ultimately, kind of what I hear you saying, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but there's this mindset as freelancers that some folks consider themselves like a task manager. Like you give me tasks, I do the tasks, and then you walk away happy. Other folks consider themselves as a consultant, which is like what you're talking about, where you're thinking about the entire process. You're thinking about what is the end goal here, and how can I help you reach that end goal, and give you a little bit of insight on what you might not be thinking about. And what I found to be true, not only in Upwork, but in all of freelancing, is that if you work like a task manager, your rates are always going to stay really low. But if you work like a consultant and a thought leader and almost like a partner in the business, then you're going to be able to command those higher rates on projects.
Yeah, and Chris, and I don't want to downplay this either, because there are a lot of people, in like my line of work, we call them production designers, is what you typically call somebody that just prefers to do more of the grunt work. Maybe they're either at that level or, honestly, I like grunt work some days. If I'm very stressed out, one of my favorite projects to do is just make cutouts, just make picture cutouts. Most of the time I outsource that to one of my other team members to do the grunt work, but it's occasionally very relaxing. So I don't at all want to downplay, that kind of stuff. If you are a production designer, or, you just want to kind of do the basics, or you want to be like you said, just a task manager, that's also perfectly fine if that's what you want to do. But, we're having the conversation about how to really jumpstart your Upwork career and how to earn the higher rates. And that is the difference between somebody who earns the higher rates and somebody who is more of the task manager. So it's just a decision on whichever one who you want to be.
Yeah, for sure. So it's kind of figuring out what you want to do with your freelancing career and kind of molding it almost like you're working from the end goal in mind, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Talk about maybe some things that you see that are common for folks who are really struggling to get some of those higher rates. And I know we've kind of mentioned a lot of them, but I know you've got some new things that you're doing with coaching freelancers, which is awesome, and I know is super helpful. So what are some common things for folks who are like, I'm trying to get those higher rate clients, but I just seem to only be able to get kind of those lower rate folks. Is it in their pitch? Is it in their profile? Is it in their interview? Is there some big, overarching thing that just stands out to you? Like this is kind of the kink in the hose, so to speak.
Yes, yes, and yes.
Okay, so it's all three.
No, it's usually is some combination of all three. And like I said, it does start with by acting as a professional. Even when I work with other freelancers, I have kind of struggled in the past finding a good personality that won't let, and I shouldn't say this in this way, probably. I'm not going to say this in the correct way. So forgive me. You can send your pitchforks to my Twitter handle at Morgan O Media. But I feel like a lot of freelancers have developed an attitude on Upwork. I know I definitely feel it as a client on Upwork. Like they're very much, you will do this my way. Like, when will I get paid? This is how I should. Like I hired a woman one day just to literally fill out resumes for me. And it was, I already had the template done. The client just requested like 30 different versions. And all it was like name swapping and swapping out some skills, just like, whatever. And in my post, and I understand once again, this is like a choice you can make, right? You can either do milestones or hourly or fixed rate. In my post, I said, because it's, basically grunt work, I would like to use, I want to use the time tracker. And I can't tell you how many replies I got to that said, my work is more valuable than the time tracker, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, then that's fine. Keep scrolling. I don't understand. Like, this isn't Facebook. Yeah. I didn't say, hi, I'm Morgan. I would like your opinions today. Like, don't waste your proposals and sending that stuff in. Either say, yes, this is the job for me, or no, that doesn't sound like the kind of job that I want. Don't cop an attitude with your clients. You would be shocked how many times I get that, or how many times people waste my time with that, saying they'll go all the way to the interview and they'll be like, oh, but that one thing you asked for, I don't do that. Oh. What? Yeah. So you're kind of setting yourself up for failure with that stuff. So that's one of them that I personally experience as a client on a regular basis. And it's really frustrating. But I would say probably some of the other things that I see people do wrong a lot of the time starts with their proposals. And it's similar problem I'm seeing now with their bios on Upwork itself. They're not client centric, right? That's the most important thing. Like, they're still very much about, this is what I'm going to get as a freelancer. Like that. I read one guy last week who I was coaching, who his bio is, I will respond to all inquiries Monday through Thursday. That was like part of his bio. And it's like, to me, that reads more about like, I only want to work Monday through Thursday. And there's nothing here about your clients or anything like that, versus my bio says, I deliver quality products and with rapid turnarounds to my clients. I am highly responsive. I love making my clients money. I love making my clients' project dreams come true. I mean, like, I talk about what I will do for my client before I ever get into me. And my proposals are almost exactly the same way. In fact, I start out every proposal now with like 2 lines about all the stuff I'm going to do about them and their proposal before I ever say the first word about myself. Then I go, about me. I'm a graphic designer with 15 years experience, blah, 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 or almost 20 now. I probably need to change it. Almost 20 now, because I started 18 years ago. Yeah, that's awesome. So go client-centric, guys. And a lot of times you see that in your bio, you see that in your proposals, you kind of see that throughout the engagement. Make it about them. Once again, date analogy, treat it like you're on a date, ask them questions, listen to what they're telling you, and not just questions about the project, about themselves, about their company, about their role in their company, about their experience working with freelancers and outsourcing. You'd be surprised how many almost kind of subconscious, I would think, or unconscious fears, or subconscious fears that the clients have about working with remote talent, that you can make them feel better at the start of a contract and do it then, before those unconscious fears or subconscious fears come up later on, and you're like, well, that came out of left field. Why did they say that? So that's honestly the stuff that I think really separates the big earners from those who don't, or not able to pull the numbers.
Yeah. And it's so funny because I feel like there's nothing really Upwork specific to what we're talking about, right? Like this is good sales in general. This is good, project management or business ideas in general. And so to win high earning projects on Upwork, you've just got to think about it from a broader perspective. And the idea that you're going to convince somebody to hand over a lot of money to you by convincing them that you're awesome, like, look at me, I'm fantastic. Like, that's not really why somebody is hiring somebody. I just had a conversation with a freelancer this last week of like, everything in your profile is all about you. Nothing points to the true desire of a client. Like, think about why would a client want to hire you? It's not just to do graphic design. It's not just to build a website. It's not just whatever it is that you're doing as a freelancer. There's some underlying motivation that somebody has that you've really got to get to the crux of. And that needs to be what you focus on whenever you're communicating or interacting with them.
And a third thing I would probably even add to that as well is don't be afraid to raise your rates. You're only you can determine your own rates based on, your skill set and your field. But at the end of the day, I think a lot of us are still undercharging. Make sure that you have some sort of guidance on that and that your rates are making sense for your level of expertise. Because I think that there are actually a lot of people who are probably more experienced in charging too little. And what it's doing for the clients is we see that and we think, that's weird. That doesn't make any sense. Are they lying about their expertise? Is there something wrong here? It's almost suspicious in a way. Like it's kind of, it might sound silly, but like I typically don't get like the bottom shelf cereal or like the bottom shelf like wine, the grocery store. Like I get like the shelf up from that at least, if not higher. Because if I walked into the Publix here tomorrow and I saw a 50-cent bottle of wine, I'd be like, something wrong with that wine. I'd be like, that's weird.
Yeah.
We're almost kind of suspicious. Now, wine's probably a bad example because you could probably just get the 50-cent wine and go try it out and another bottle of wine as a backup, but you're not going to typically do that with a freelancer. And honestly, I've hired cheaper freelancers before in the past too. And usually it's kind of like a bad bottle of wine. You're like, I regret that.
Yeah. There is that psychology of like, you get what you pay for, and the more you invest in it, the more you're going to get out, or the easier the process is. I'd love to kind of go back to a little bit of what you talked about with proposals, about addressing some of the anxieties before a client even kind of brings them up, because I think that's something that is really prevalent in sales copy, which I'm sure you've probably done a lot of research if you've been working on blogs and all that kind of stuff. But that is a key element of good sales copy, is that you're gathering the anxieties or the objections, and you're not highlighting to the extent to where they become almost even more anxious about them, but you're kind of addressing them and you're deflating them a little bit. So talk a little bit about what you've done with your own clients to kind of remove some of that Upwork anxiety that they might be experiencing in hiring a freelancer.
Yeah, well, it's kind of funny because aren't we like that in our own personal lives, really? We're definitely different. Even with my second time on this podcast, I feel more relaxed with you because now we've already had conversations, versus having just met a year ago. So we're naturally more responsive and more relaxed with people that we trust, right? Especially people that we've met online. And once again, we know this is true with online dating, online freelancing, what have you. And so I think it's really important, to kind of uncover those fears in the beginning of the contract and address them head on, but also listen. Because if you don't have any trust in the relationship, it will likely go off the rails. Something will come up, they will feel antsy about the whole thing, and the contract will it'll just go much more smoothly if you address it all up front. And like I said earlier, also listen. Like I actually had a client who straight up told me last year, and it was, they won't listen to this podcast, thank goodness, but I'm telling you, they told me straight up when they first started working with me that they did not want to work remotely, and they only were working remotely because of COVID. And they said that otherwise they would want me like right there. In fact, during the contract, because they were only about 4 hours away, they kept saying, hey, what if you just come over? And this was like at the height of everything crazy going on. We didn't really know. And I'm like, guys, this is supposed to be like a remote contract. And it eventually did go off the rails. And I think they hired somebody local because but it was after I basically had to fire the client because there was no trust in the relationship. They kept acting like scared about every milestone and thinking, oh, well, I don't know. I feel like if I was just in person, I could have explained this better, and we're just not communicating. And normally it's the kind of red flag I would listen to, right? But because I ignored that red flag when they told me, oh, I'm very nervous about this transaction, I don't like working remotely. Smart Morgan would have been like, then you're not meant for this. Wait till after COVID and you can hire somebody directly instead of trying this whole internet thing. But a lot of times, like if I ask them about their experiences, I'll follow up. Like if they say they do have experiences with freelancing online, I followed up with, well, how did that go? Was that experience good? Was it bad? If it's bad, more importantly, why was it bad? What went wrong? And it's in a way, not only addressing your client's fears, but also making sure that you are listening to all the red flags that they're telling you. Because if they're telling you stuff like, that sounds kind of suspicious about why it didn't go right the first time, maybe you should rethink even taking that contract. Or if it's something that clearly the freelancer was in error, you can say, well, look, no problem. I don't miss deadlines. I understand I've been doing this for X number of years. I work with big name clients. I'm not afraid to name drop ever. I've worked with the CDC Foundation. I've worked with, Granier Bakery. I've, that kind of stuff. And they'll be like, okay. Or I'll say, or even tell them, I've been in your shoes too. I once hired a freelancer who did the same thing to me. And I completely understand how that throws off your budget and your deadline. I'll do those kinds of things and try to relate to them so that we establish this trust. And I know exactly where they've come from, not just even on a business level, but on like a freelancer engagement level. And those little conversations, if you stop to have them, are such a game changer. I also ask them about their company. I ask them about the history of their company. Sometimes if it's a small company, I'm asking them about their role in the company. My favorite thing to do is talk to small business owners. And the more you let people talk about themselves too, the more it's a Dale Carnegie method, right? The more they'll come away feeling like they had an excellent conversation or thinking that you're a great conversationalist because they did, all the talking. So it's like those little things that I do to establish a relationship really early on and make myself be seen as somebody that they can trust. And I cannot tell you, if you enter in a contract like that, it's going to be so much easier going forward. And then also by listening to the red flags too, because those might come up during that inquiry phase, gives you a chance to back up and say, whoa, I don't think this is going to work for me. So it's kind of a twofold thing, in a way. Making your clients feel better about the situation and also, maybe thinking about the situation yourself before you get into it.
Something you mentioned, I think is super important. It's the idea of social proof, like you've got a client who's nervous, but you can say, well, listen, I've worked with the CDC. I've worked with these bigger name companies. I'm on Business Insider. Upwork has interviewed me on their podcast. They've interviewed me. I've done written interviews with Upwork. So like there's a little bit more social proof behind what you're getting. One of the complaints that I hear a lot of times from freelancers, especially maybe folks who are more seasoned in their skills, more seasoned in their craft, is that they're going to have to get onto Upwork, take low-paying jobs before they get some of that social proof for the feedback on the platform and all that kind of stuff. How do you address that, or how do you coach people who have that kind of idea of like, I want to get into Upwork, but I don't want to have to completely lower my rates. I have no feedback whatsoever. I'm new to the platform. What do I do?
Well, luckily, things are a little bit easier than they used to be when I joined Upwork, right? Like when I joined Upwork, there was no such thing as testimonials, for instance. I couldn't ask my existing clients to go on there and write a review for me. Well, not a review, write a testimonial for me, and kind of vouch for my skills. Today you can do that. So if you're a brand new freelancer coming to Upwork, you can say, hey, look, I have some of your clients, as long as you're active. I think you have to be somewhat active in order to do that. But you can ask your clients, come over, hey, look, would you vouch for me, write a nice little testimonial? You can still easily name drop in that bio. You can name drop in that proposal. Heck, I tell a lot of people, especially for the seasoned designers, hilariously, I coached a girl a few months ago who had worked with I can't even remember the name of the company. Let's say she's like IBM or something. Like it was a major company. But the funny thing is her bio it was buried like under the read more that she'd ever done that. I didn't even get to that. I mean, the bio was like 2,000 words long. And I'm like, I'm not going to read a whole story about you. I'm a busy client, I'm trying to move on here. And when I finally got to the IBM part, I'm like, why is that not at the top of your profile, maybe in your title?
Yeah.
And I love the idea of putting it in titles. I think every title should be a unique selling proposition, because when people are querying the platform, if you have one person that says, I'm a web developer, and then the next line down says web developer worked at Microsoft in parentheses, which one you think you're clicking on?
Right.
So if you do have that experience bringing it to the table, bring it to the table. Don't think it sounds egotistical or worry that you're going to sound however which way by saying it. You need to say it. That's really impressive to your clients. Now with all that said, if you went and got my blog tomorrow, I'm absolutely, Chris, one of those people that lowered my rates for the first week on Upwork. All right. I don't regret it one bit. I was able to get some quick reviews. I was able to build my reputation, no time flat. Sure, I could have sat there and I could have tried to get stuff at higher rates. I did apply for a lot of fixed rate stuff. It's just not what happened to come in at the time. The gig I took was a little $10 fixed rate vector tweak. I knew I could do it quickly. I was done in 10 minutes. So technically speaking, on par with my rates today. But the guy, he gave me a 5-star review. For me, being a little bit more open-minded in the beginning, personally, picky but open-minded, helped me just get my profile to where it wanted to be quickly versus having to wait. I didn't have a safety net. I already quit my job. So I needed the money tomorrow, today.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Well, I think that goes back to the fact that, you have to look at it as an investment, just as you look at the fees that you're paying to Upwork from the projects that you're getting. When you're first getting started, you are investing a little bit more than what you're getting in return. But the curve goes up really quickly once you start getting some feedback, once you become a top-rated freelancer. Like, it's game on from that point.
I should have said that too. I should have said it was only for a couple of weeks and I was back on par to where I was offsite, and so a couple of weeks, I've done way more things that have wasted my time as far as freelancing is concerned that lasted longer than a week. I've had bad clients that drug on and refused to pay for weeks on end. When I was trying to network back in the day, I was attending like all these health conferences because a lot of my clients come from the healthcare industry. And I was like passing out business cards, spending all this money going to in-person conferences and never got a single nibble. I've done lots of things that have wasted more time and money than lowered my rates on Upwork for 3 days. So, if you feel like you're going to speed up a little bit faster by doing it that way, just do it. Who cares? If you need the client, just do it. But like I said, there are multiple ways to get it done. I've also known freelancers to get on there and get like $100 an hour with their first gig. So, hey, more power to you.
Well, Morgan, it has been just awesome talking to you. You've got amazing insight as always. Tell us a little bit about what you're looking forward to in the future. I know you've got quite a few things that you've been working on. So, share some of that with the self-made audience.
Well, first I wanted to say, I wanted to make a really quick comment about, yourself and your course and even what a lot of us high earners on Upwork are doing nowadays. A lot of us are kind of now passing the torch on to the next generation that we have established ourselves and especially in a post-2020 world where so many people are looking at freelance. I mean, we saw a study just a few weeks ago about how like a significant portion of the population is now considering freelance more than ever before. Because they either don't want to go back to work for various reasons, or they just want to explore being a business owner for the first time. And here's the thing, guys, whether, you take Chris's course or you just like look up, vlogs on the internet or blogs or whatever it is that you're looking at, I want you to take note of something. A lot of us are saying basically the same thing from a variety of industries. Like your main industry is web design. I tinker in web design, but my primary industry is graphic design, right? Yet going through your course, 98% of the advice is applicable to any industry. And you say almost exactly the same advice that I give on a regular basis. Please, whatever you do, listen to the people who have been in your shoes and are openly giving the advice that you need to hear in both freelance, in business, and especially in the niche of Upwork. There's this no scam, I ain't selling anything. So I'm telling you, we're putting it out there. We're making these resources available to y'all that y'all whippersnappers that we didn't have back in our day. 5 years ago, when not as many people knew about Upwork and what was possible. And I just think it's a really interesting thing, don't you, that we all basically say the same thing, no matter where we come from.
Yeah, it is interesting. And I think it goes back to good business is good business, like whether it's in the framework of Upwork as a web designer, whether it's in the framework of, freelancing out in, the wild, so to speak, as a graphic designer or web developer, it's the same principles. And I think you apply them to anything and it's going to work. So,
And
yeah.
especially listen to advice like Chris's, like what the thing that really struck me about your course is all very actionable, right? I can't tell you how many times I click on a blog post or take a course and they're just kind of giving me these pie in the sky ideas and it's nothing but a bunch of inspirational quotes. And I still have to do, I'm left with nothing, no actual physical thing to do. Your course comes with an actual, homework. It comes with like its actual tool where you can goal track. It comes with actual real actionable advice. It's not just going to be this frou-frou stuff. And it's seriously in depth. One of the most in-depth Upwork courses specifically that I've seen. I think you said something like 9 hours of total content. and it's so easily digestible. Like the things that I do, this is when I get my vlogging and stuff in, or my courses in, is I just do it like in the morning when I'm getting ready for work, or I do it at night while I'm folding the clothes. It's the kind of stuff where you can just hear it in the background, but you're still absorbing it. And in no time flat, if you listen to 30 minutes a day, you're still done in like a couple, 2 to 3 weeks. It's easy peasy. And exactly what, he's not holding anything back. Exactly what Chris has done to become top rated on Upwork. And I can 100% vouch for what he says. Cause like I said, we've all done almost the exact same thing. So yeah, but I will go back and answer your question eventually, Chris. I just wanted to say that really quickly.
Well, I feel really good about myself now. Thank you so much for all those kind words. That's great.
It just strikes me. It always strikes me that, two different worlds, and yet our advice is more or less the same. I just find that so interesting.
Yeah,
but yeah,
awesome.
no, I'm super excited. I'm like you. I'm trying to build up my blog with a B right now. Eventually, maybe next year, I can finally experiment in the world of vlogging with a V.
Yes.
We'll see. RockinTheSmokies.com. That's been amazing. I touched on that last time. We launched it right after I talked to you during the first podcast. Now I'm up to 3.6 million page views inside the first year. Yes.
That's awesome.
Now I've launched my second vlog, which is going to be more about freelancing and about Upwork and working from home and how to make money from home. So you can check that out at morganoverholt.com. Or you can also follow me on Twitter, Morgan O Media. And I recently got a Patreon just in case, I've had some requests for like one-on-one, conversations. So if you do want me to critique your bio or your proposals, I have a just looking account on Patreon for like $5, and it gives you an open line of communication with me. $100 if you want like lengthy one-on-one conversations via Zoom every month. But I've been doing a little bit of that as well. So yeah, and like you said, kind of trying to pass on the torch a little bit and help people. But plenty of free resources available as well at morganoverholt.com. You don't need to do the Patreon thing unless you just want to see more of my beautiful face.
Yeah. Well, Morgan, thank you so much for coming on, and all the kind words and all the great insight. I want to encourage everybody to go visit morganoverholt.com. And we're going to have to make this a yearly thing, I think, where you just come back every year and we hear from you.
I know. It's so good. It's so good to see everything that you're doing. And thank you for doing everything that you're doing, because I know it really inspires people.
Man, such good insight from Morgan. And I love the fact that what she's encouraging everybody to do is not complicated. It's not hard. You don't need to go back and get a 4-year degree to crack this code. No, this is stuff you can put in place right now, today, and start seeing instant results from. So I want to encourage you again, if you are looking to go even further on how to become a 6-figure freelancer on the Upwork platform, I am hosting a free training, a free live masterclass called 3 Simple Steps to Land High-Paying Clients on Upwork. So go to selfmadeWebDesigner.com/Upwork and sign up. There's 3 time slots available. And good news, we're going to do a Q&A at the end of every single one of these live master classes. So you're going to get a chance to ask some questions and get some feedback in real time. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I love hanging out with people who are listening to the podcast and who are trying to become self-made web designers themselves. So go to selfmadewebdesigner.com/Upwork and sign up before it's too late, because there is a very quick shutdown time where these masterclasses are ending. So, okay, again, we're going to do this podcast, just because it seems to be working. People seem to like it and seem to be getting some help from it. So another episode is going to be dropping Wednesday night at midnight. It's going to be a lot of fun. Stay up with me. We'll celebrate. We'll rock it. We'll do it. Until then, keep on working. Keep on going for it as a freelancer. And don't forget, if you don't quit, you win.